Hey there, and welcome to Season 4 of Stories Unveiled, the podcast where we believe every story has the power to inspire, connect, and transform. Whether it's through the mundane moments or the life-altering tragedies, we highlight God's story on display in our lives. Each episode, our guests get real and dive into their own personal journey, where we hold hardship in one hand and hope in the other, while we explore Jesus in the messy middle. I'm Ashley Sears, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey, it's Ashley here at Stories Unveiled. Before we dive into this episode, I want to personally invite you to our upcoming annual Fall Women's Conference. This is your chance to experience the power of real, life-changing stories, just like the ones here on every episode, brought to life in person. Join us for a full day of hope, inspiration, and connection, featuring incredible regional and local speakers and a moving keynote session, plus amazing uplifting worship. Connect with amazing community partners and browse our curated vendor booths. Don't miss this opportunity to gather, grow, and be encouraged by stories of hope at this fall's Stories Unveiled conference. Register now at storiesunveiledconference.com. We can't wait to see you there. Jane and Joe Oliver met in Boise, Idaho in 2000, married in 2002, and have spent the last 24 years serving side by side in various pastoral roles. They're the co-founders of Stories of TOV, a ministry helping people find wholeness from God through right relationships in the rediscovery of His story. When they're not creating content or mentoring others, you'll find them relaxing in the pool or catching up on their favorite shows together. Thank you so much for being here, guys.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
We have never done a couple like this ever, and I'm so excited. And so it's going to be a little bit of a different format. I want both of you guys to talk. We're going to dive in a little bit to both of your stories. But you have been doing ministry together for a very long time, which I think is amazing. Yeah. And Jane, I want to start with you and ask, how did you grow up? What was your home life like in the way of, was it ministry minded? Did you grow up in the Christian church being involved in ministry? Like, did you foresee this?
No, I did not. So I grew up here in Boise, and I grew up in a large family who are still primarily LDS, Mormon, and so I grew up in the LDS church. Early on, I was pretty young when I realized I have a lot of questions, and one of the pivotal moments of my story was when I had a friend whose dad was a pastor of a church here locally. And we would talk about our faith, we would talk about Jesus, we would talk about things that we would be learning in church. And I remember talking to my parents, and they said, I said, I'm confused, this friend believes in Jesus, and how are they different than us? And why is it that, we tend to look differently on their faith? And it was apparent at that time that I wasn't in a space. My experience was that I couldn't ask a lot of questions. Yeah. My parents did the best that they could. They're wonderful people, love the Lord, but there were a lot of, again, my experience was that this isn't a space where you can ask a lot of questions, that you can wrestle with things that are hard. You just sort of take what is told to you and you accept it. And if you don't accept that, then you don't have enough faith, or you don't trust. Yeah. So that's how I grew up, and, came to know Jesus a little bit. Well, I was a young adult, old teenager, and I've never looked back. Yeah. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Joe, what about you? Did you have ministry background, grow up in the church? What did it look like growing up for you?
No, we didn't grow up in the church. Christianity for us was not ever on the radar. There was a little time when I was really young that my family did go to the LDS church. But by the time I was 11, 12, we had stopped going. And so there was not a lot of connection there for me. As a young teenager, I did not grow up in the church. It was never on the radar. God was never a part of conversations. Church was a foreign thing. For us, Sunday mornings, we're hanging out with friends, and we would go to where the churches were because they had big lawns, and we'd play football on Sunday mornings and getting in trouble, asked to leave because we're distracting the kids in Sunday school.
Oh, my gosh.
But no, we didn't grow up in church, and so it wasn't until I was almost 16 that I accepted the Lord and never looked back.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So when you guys met, you had both found Jesus. Is that true? Did you guys start dating and you were already Christians? You had already kind of found Jesus at that point?
For me, I was a youth pastor. So I moved to Boise in June of 2000. I took a position as a youth pastor. I was 21 years old. Okay. And I did that for 7 years. And that's where Jane and I met. She was attending the church that I was a youth pastor at. And so, I'll let her tell her side of the story, but she fell in love with the youth pastor. And we got married very quickly after that.
I actually know a little bit about this story, about your guys' dating and meeting situation.
On again, off again situation. Yeah.
Yeah. But she had started going to this church and learning to follow Jesus, and I was in ministry for the first time in my adult life as a 21-year-old, and then in 2002 we got married, and never looked back. So our whole adult lives, really, all we've done is pastoral ministry.
I wasn't a Christian when I first started going to the church that he was the youth pastor at. I had gotten kicked out of my parents' house, and moved in with my best friend, and her mom was like, hey, we'd really appreciate it if you would go to church. We don't care what church, but I have these young kids, they look up to you. I was like, all right, I'll just go with you. And so it was a lot of through our friendship even where I became more of a disciple, even though that's kind of a, big Christian word, but follower of Jesus. And I fell in love with Jesus mostly through the dialogue, and I was able to ask questions. And so, Yeah,
we would stay up late just talking about the Bible and faith, and she'd go, what about this? What about this? And
so you started out as friends.
Yeah.
When you were asked to go to church, like, hey, we'd really appreciate, because you were living with your friend's family and there was little kids in the house, and that was kind of the catalyst, right? Like, hey, you're an example.
Yep.
Could we ask you to come? Did you walk into that thinking it was going to be kind of the same thing as what you had experienced growing up?
Yes, but no. I did ask my friend, like, what is this like? What am I walking into? And so I was prepared for the environment. What I wasn't prepared for was how quickly I would find Jesus and how deep I would fall. It was, it was Easter Sunday and Christmas where I would love going to church growing up because it was only about Jesus. Yeah. And so it just felt natural. It felt like I was home.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you got married. You guys have 2 beautiful kids.
Yeah, adult children now.
That's true. They're adult children.
Not kids.
They're amazing, though. They are amazing.
They are.
Thank you.
And you ventured on this ministry journey. Tell me a little bit about just ministry over the last 24 years.
Yeah, so we were youth pastors. I worked at a church in Boise, did that for 7 years. And then God began to work in our hearts about year 6 into that journey, maybe 5.5, year 6, somewhere in there, that we had gotten to a place where we had just felt like if this is all that church is, we were done. And what I mean by that was we were in an environment where it was if the doors are open, you're at church.
Yeah.
So 2 services, No, there was a couple services on Sunday and then like a Sunday night service. So it was like you're there morning and then evening back in the, remember you do Sunday night services?
Yes.
That doesn't happen anymore, but that was a big deal. So we did Sunday night, then it was Wednesday for all the
midweek
meetings,
things.
Midweek things. If you weren't serving in certain capacity. So it just felt like all you're doing is asking more and more and more and more. And we had a point of contention. We had our firstborn. He was just a baby, and we lived in Nampa, which is a little bit of a drive from Boise. And I remember Michael wasn't feeling well. It was a Sunday night, and I think the turning point for us was that when I wanted to go and be there to support Jane and take care of Michael, because when you're firstborn, you're like,
oh, yeah,
go to the hospital for everything.
Yeah.
Secondborn, you're like, oh my gosh, you're going to be okay.
You're going to be fine. We already went through this.
We've been through this, you'll be fine. Firstborn, it's like everything's a panic,
yeah,
right? And so we're like, we got to take him to the hospital. And I was made to feel like that I should have stayed at the church to do my job.
That choosing your family was...
And that was the first sign of like, I had to tell Jane yeah, they're not wanting me to go, and it was hard for her, and I eventually did leave.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, I'm going to go be there for my family. There was another time where this was a church where people would come up and receive prayer at the altar at the front of the stage, and as ministers, we'd be going around praying for people, and Michael was just a little baby, and I was holding him as I was going around and praying and just walking around with my son. And I was told to give Michael back to Jane, and my focus should be with the people. And it didn't sit with us. Yeah. It just didn't sit with us.
Well, I love that was even your, that this is okay, that it wasn't even a question, at least for you. Like, you have your son, doing ministry as a family, and what I actually think it's kind of a beautiful thing. Jesus also said, let the children come to me, to have your kid and to be able to pray and kind of what a beautiful thing.
And some of it too, I like to think I was that intentional spiritually. Yeah. I think I was just trying to help Jane because.
Well, no, for
I'll
sure.
You're for a little bit.
You're the reality of it is I was just trying to be a good dad and a good husband.
But all that to say, it began to sit within us that if this is what it means to be in church, and again, I didn't grow up in church,
right.
So my context, I didn't have a historical...
No point of reference.
I'm we just went I don't know that we want this.
Yeah.
And
in addition to that, excuse me for cutting you off.
Oh, please do.
But we were starting to I don't want to use the word deconstruct. We were starting to dive deeper into what we believed.
Yeah.
I'll use the word
primarily,
deconstruct.
Okay, Joe can use the word deconstruct. There was a lot of books that he was reading that were different than, at the time, a little controversial, or I guess depending on who you asked. And so we would have really good dialogue, and it was almost like this, call back to my childhood where it was like, oh, so this is okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. This is exciting. It doesn't have to be what the pastor says from the stage every Sunday, and that was not received well. And so there was some pushback on that, which was another contributing factor to is this what we want? If this is church,
for you to be able to seek
interested
who Jesus is on your own with what the Bible says, instead of having to fit into a box, because I don't believe Jesus lives in a box.
Yeah, it was and it wasn't even a desire to leave where we were at.
Right.
It was I was told this is how this theological concept works. And then I was introduced to well, not everybody thinks that. And that was new for me. It was oh, I thought all Christians think this.
Yeah.
And that this is the way it is. And so then to wrestle with, there's different ways to think about this. And so when I began to ask questions, we were made to feel it was just a negative experience when we said, hey, is this really true? Is this the way it always is? It wasn't well, let's talk about it. Let's work through that. People think different things. And this is where we land, and that's where we're at. But lots of people think different things. It was, who are you reading? And you should stop.
It's so hard.
And that just felt gross.
Yeah.
And so we were just like, oh, that's not who. Oh, so now we're a threat?
Yeah.
Like, it was a weird. So for us, we began to, so that was, year, I don't know. I don't remember the exact date.
5 or
But-
6.
So we just began to pray, God, okay, if this, not this, then what?
What do you have for us?
What do you have for us? And it was there that he, I believe he spoke to me in prayer, and then we would talk about it. But it was a response of like God saying, "You can leave, you can move on, and that's okay, and I'm okay, and I'll be with you, or you can do something about the thing that you're frustrated about." And that led us to pray about launching our own church, which we did in January of 2007.
So you started your own church. That is an undertaking.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
How long did you guys do that?
10 years?
Okay.
9-10 years. It was a church of thinking faith, authentic community. It was a lot of people who had been burned and hurt by church, people who had questions, people who wanted to just have a space to wrestle, and that was important to us. But Joe was also bivocational, which means, he was working full time for an actual business.
Right. You had a vocational job in addition to being a pastor.
Yeah.
Pastoral
Full-time pastor,
was a
full-time
ministry, and you were also making money, doing
in the for-profit space.
in the for-profit space. Yeah, which is hard. I mean, you had 2 jobs.
Yeah.
You had 2 jobs, and
A young family.
and a whole family, and I think a lot of people, it's kind of in the same idea of you're at church all the time whenever the doors are open, because serving Jesus, like there's nothing above serving Jesus. And so I'd like to say, because I've been in full-time ministry as well, I'd like to say that when you're serving Jesus and you're doing things for the Lord and you're running a church, like your marriage probably didn't suffer, right? Like things probably didn't fall off. You guys,
Never.
I mean, right?
Never.
Yeah. And so, so that's the thing is like, but you still have life, and God actually calls you to your home and your ministry. And what did those 10 years look like with just the struggle and the real life of like, you're a pastor, you were pastoring alongside of him, you guys were doing this together, and burnout and strife. And what did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I think initially it was pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
And then just the weight of trying to build something from nothing. I know for me, I probably wasn't the healthiest leader. Spiritually, emotionally, and I carried bad habits from what I was modeled. And so there was like growth mindset for an expectation I had in church that if we're not hitting certain numbers, we're not successful.
Yeah.
When people would leave, these conversations of, hey, we need to do coffee. As a pastor, that's like
Oh, yeah.
it's like, I don't need to do coffee with you. If you're just going to leave, just send me a text you're going to leave. I'm done with the coffee appointment. So, these things of like how you handle those things and how you not take them personally, I think as ministers, that's extremely difficult. And it's probably not talked about enough is the weight that what it feels like for a minister, for someone to say, I no longer want to be at your church, and there's always the like, well, God's just calling me to move on, which I just want to call like, just be honest with me and be like, dude, you don't like me, or you don't like this, or you don't like, I don't know.
I have to just say, I do appreciate you saying that because, and I think we'll get into this more too, but the Christian words and phrases that we use, especially for somebody maybe listening that's not a Christian or maybe is new, and the Christianese, right? The things that we say, well, a Christian can't argue if I say God's calling me somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
And if that's the truth, then that's the truth.
Yeah.
And I just feel like so many times we use the kitschy Christian phrases to mask the reality, to just say like, listen, this isn't working.
Right.
Yep. And so that weight over the course of 10 years caused me to to develop unhealthy behaviors. I've always had an addiction to nicotine, and so I started smoking, and just to detox from the weight and pressure. And I hid it from Jane for years. She would catch me, and then I'm so sorry, I'll never, do it again. I'll deny it, like I would deny it and just lie to her all the time. No, I'd gaslight her.
Yeah.
That was this, and you're crazy for thinking this, and just a lot of gaslighting, a lot of lying, hiding my own shame and my guilt, and that, and it just really that carried forward. There'd be seasons where I would pick it back up, and then I would drop it because she'd catch me, and then I'd be like, oh, we'll never do it again. And then, it just was this really, really rough place where I, as a leader, and a lot of it was I was modeled early in ministry as a young man that there's ministry life and then there's home life. And you don't need to bring your ministry life into your home life because your family doesn't need to carry the burden that you carry when you're having, as a pastor, you're doing a lot of counseling, you're doing a lot of emotional support, and so that's weighty. When people are unloading their deepest hurts and pains and devastation from, marriages breaking up, whatever, and you're walking beside people through those really difficult times. The narrative I was always given as a young minister was that, that's ministry. Don't put that burden on Jane. Don't go home and unload on her. So I would keep it in. So I had no outlet to go today was really tough, and here's why, and to just let it out to someone who wants to carry the burden with me. And so there was a withdrawal that happened, and what started out as an us thing became a me thing.
Yeah. As
Jane kind of slowly took a back seat, not because she wanted that, but because I started pulling away, and it was a really crazy, beautiful time in our lives because we met some of the greatest friends that we still have to this day who continue to pour into us to this day. Yeah. But also one of the most difficult times. I mean, it broke me at the end. So,
what about you?
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to point out is that a year into starting this church, it was originally a daughter church to the church that we had left.
Got it.
We had, full paycheck from them. We were given all of our sound gear that we actually fundraised for. And they, let us have some people to come and help us launch our church. And about a year in, because of some, what I feel are minor differences in how things should be ran, they cut it off. So we had to start from scratch. So there was a lot of wrestling that we had to do in our faith. Who are we? Who are we as Christians? Who are we as a church? What should church look like? I feel like it was a blessing because it really shaped us. So on that side of things, we were starting to really dive into our faith together and starting to dialogue, what should this look like to be lived out in a way that honors Jesus? But on the flip side, I had 2 kids that I was raising. That was my ministry. And there would be times I wouldn't go to church because these are my kids and this is what I'm going to pour my life into. But we had really great conversations about faith, about where we wanted to go as a church. But there were things that I could tell Joe was pulling away from me on. And so we had our highs and our lows. I'll just say that. But it was a season of life I would do all over again because there was a lot that we learned about ourselves through that. And
a lot that came out of it for you guys, and you are in such a better place now. I'm assuming in your marriage.
Oh yeah.
And in ministry and in all of the ways. Sometimes we have to walk through some really garbage situations to get to where we're healthier and better for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you went on and continued ministry. You've been a youth pastor, a head pastor, senior pastor. You've been an associate pastor, because you were my pastor at one point, although you're my friend first. So that kind of brings us to your journey of deconstruction, what that looks like, who Jesus is to you, what the Bible says about Jesus and who God is in our lives, and all of these things kind of brings us to what you guys are doing right now, which is, I just think, such an incredible ministry, because your guys' stories have led to this very moment in what you guys to believe authentic relational ministry should look like. And it's this ministry called Stories of TOV.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, first of all, what is TOV? I mean, I know, but tell our listeners.
Yeah. Tov is the Hebrew word for good.
Yeah.
And so found most often in Genesis chapter 1 when God says it's good, it's good, it's good. And then chapter 131 where he says it's very good, it's very Tov is the word. Sounds like stove without the F.
Yeah.
Tov.
Yeah.
And so it just means good. And so the good stories, God said this is good. And so that's kind of the genesis of the idea, is just simply to say that we believe that God created this earth, this world, and us for good.
Yeah.
And we've lost a lot of that good. And it's hard to see good sometimes in God's story. And so we want to help people see the good of God, his creation, and his story in light of maybe a negative experience that they've encountered with God, or
with people of God.
People of God.
Right.
We have a statement. We say we never judge Jesus by the abuse done in his name.
100%.
And so that's kind of the idea, is like, okay, I understand you had this experience from church or from whatever. Let's actually investigate who Jesus actually is in light of your experience, because we shouldn't judge or hold Jesus accountable necessarily for someone who, in his name, did a terrible thing.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like if I believed everything I heard about said person, right, without actually knowing who they are myself, like, we're just taking somebody's word for it. It's our job as believers to find out who Jesus is ourselves and have our own relationship with them to know who he is.
We're all called to be representatives of him. We're image bearers of him.
And not everybody always does a great job
and
at that.
sometimes people do a really terrible job of that. So, but that doesn't mean Jesus is terrible.
Absolutely.
It just means we did a bad job modeling him.
Yeah.
And so that's where the idea comes from. That's what Tov is. Good.
So tell me, either one of you, Jane, I don't know, or whoever wants to tell me, what are you guys doing with Stories of TOV? There are two, that's kind of your overarching, that's your ministry, Stories of TOV. And you have two very cool things under Stories of TOV, and what you guys are doing to really meet people where they are, literally meet people where they are, and show them who Jesus is, both through word and action. Tell me about these two really cool things that you're doing out of Stories of TOV.
I'll start with, we're doing Barstool Theology. Is that what we settled on? Okay.
Barstool Theology. I love it.
So one thing that I can feel confident in saying we are very passionate about erasing those lines in the sand and saying, well, who are you? Where are you at? Let's talk.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
It's okay.
Those lines in the sand that you say is something that I would call legalism, right? Like to erase all of the boxes, right? Keeping inside of this box and I'm going to meet you where you are, and we're just going to dive in.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of traditional spaces, there is a expectation to look, act, believe, be a certain thing before you can feel like you belong. I've seen it too many times, and it breaks my heart every time. And so I'm like, you know what? I want to clear it. I want to get rid of these lines in the sand, and let's just share life together and talk about what are your struggles. Here are my struggles. What are things we can celebrate together? What are things we can cry about together? I want to see you. I want to love you. I want to hear you. A lot of people don't feel seen. They don't feel heard, especially in church.
Yeah.
And what a tragedy that is, because church should be the place where people feel the most seen, the most valued, the most loved. And that's not most people's experience. So we have Barstool Theology, where we are meeting in pubs, bars, and we're saying, hey, let's get rid of this intimidating environment, and let's meet together and let's talk. And it doesn't even have to be about faith. It doesn't have to be about Jesus. Like, let's talk about what's the music culture here in Boise. Let's talk about how to pay bills well. How, let's just talk about things that people are actually wrestling with. With that in mind, Jesus is our everything. And so we would eventually love to help people find the good, the TOV of God again for their life, because we believe his story is good and he loves them. And so to represent him well, we want to love them. So that's what we're doing. It's right now every other Wednesday. We're meeting currently at the Sockeye Trolley off of Fairview and Cloverdale.
In Boise.
But we're going to outgrow it. And at that point, we'll have to find somewhere else. So, we always have that information up to date on our website, storiesoftov.com.
And that will be in the show notes. So anybody interested in any of the things that we're talking about, they can go and they can click on it.
Yeah. So that's Barstool Theology. We're starting the end of this month, which is April. Yeah. So we will be then every other week kicking it off. So.
Yeah. I'm excited. It's a place, like Jane said, where people can ask questions.
Yeah.
And it's not through the lens of, Joe, Bible Answer guy. I don't know if anybody remembers it. I don't even know if his show's still going, but there was a radio show called Bible Answer Man. I used to love to listen to back in the day. But all that to say, it's not that I'm there to go, let me answer all your questions. Yeah. It's there to help us actually just wrestle with the ability to have a conversation in questions. And so it's like, we're just not good at sitting in difference where we can create space for people to wrestle. Too much in churches, we want to fix it. Well, let me tell you what the answer is. You just need to believe, you just don't have enough faith, or you don't just trust. And it's like, no, it's okay to sit in that. I don't have to be threatened by your questions. Yeah. And
God's not threatened by our questions.
God's not threatened by our questions. Exactly.
And I just think it's a discipline that we've lost, our ability to sit in a group as a group of people and just wrestle with hard things. Like Jane said, Jesus is everything to us. We believe everything is spiritual. So we can talk about things that may not be biblically focused, but we also believe that God's Spirit is
like paying your bills or whatever.
So there's a lens by which we want to help people see that there is a way to see the world that actually will lead to the good for your life and the life of others, and we believe that lens is the lens of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so, but it's just a place. Come, ask questions, wrestle. We have a structure. It'll be organized. It's not just a free-for-all, but we'll have a topic every week that gets decided at the end of the night for the next meeting that everybody gets to vote on what we're going to talk about, and then you come back together and have the discussion. And so we're really excited about this. Really excited to get this going.
I'm so excited for you guys. And I love that you're not afraid to sit in the hard and the messes, and you're building a relationship with people before you start hitting them over the head with the Bible. I know you'll never hit them over the head with the Bible, but I mean, and I feel like that's something that's so important, because most people who either don't know Jesus or have walked away from Jesus or have church hurt or Christian people wounds, right? Like all of this baggage that they bring to it. I'll say religious baggage. Relationship needs to be built before anything else. And I feel like Jesus was the example of that too. Like he built relationships with people. And so to just sit with people and see them, hear them, and build trust and build a relationship. And this isn't we're just going to sit and anything goes and we'll just let you, it's you love Jesus. Yep. You guys are like, Jesus is the most amazing person that ever walked this earth, and the Bible is the most amazing book that has ever been written. And I know your guys' hearts, and Joe, I'm pretty sure I've heard you say something to the effect like that. Like, he can change lives. He will change lives. You know,
has changed lives.
He has changed lives. Absolutely.
We're walking examples of it. So,
and that you so tightly claim that and are just so comfortable in sitting in that's okay, that you're not there.
Yeah, you know, this Barstool theology isn't for everyone. You know, it's for people who are dechurched, meaning that they had gone to church, but they had walked away and they're like, I don't want any of that anymore. The deconstructing, people are like, I'm not sure the things I believe are the things I believe anymore, but I don't know where to like wrestle with that, because if I bring it up here, I'm going to get in trouble. It's for people who are in these spaces, they're skeptical, but they don't know how to they don't have a space to actually vocalize what they're skeptical about.
Yeah.
And at the heart of it, they're still spiritually curious.
Yeah.
So like the de-churched can be spiritual. I'm still spiritual. I'm interested in God and Jesus. I'm just not sure I'm interested in that form of it. Deconstructing all those. So all of that. So it's, you know, not for everyone.
Yeah,
just
of course.
Come and like, you know.
Well, because it's not church.
Yeah.
But I do actually want to say you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are slowly starting to build relationships with churches, right? Around the valley.
Yep.
Like your goal is to be able to visit and go to actual traditional church, like on a Sunday, to build relationships in an effort to, in your ministry, when somebody is like, okay, so church. Like I'm ready to talk about church.
Yeah.
So you have an avenue to be able to point people and say, we've got some great people, some great friends over at this church or that church or whatever, and point people in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the church is where people grow in maturity and in discipleship, and are loved and pastored. And we're not a church. This isn't a church. And we're not the pastors.
Yeah.
And so there's a world where when people get to a space like, okay, so church, we can go, let me introduce you to someone that I think you'll really grow and really like. And so, we are visiting churches right now. That's kind of where we're at, is where we can network with pastors and invite them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
To go, hey, come visit us. Come attend one.
Come sit in the mess with people.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like we get to just hang out with some really cool people.
Yeah.
And I think for a minister, and again, we've been in pastoral ministry for 24 years. There's something about when you're a pastor, your focus and emphasis is so much on your church that you lose connection with the broader audience because, and rightfully so, there's a lot of things to deal with inside of a church. So what happens in pastoral ministry oftentimes is you lose connection with what conversations people are having outside of the church.
Yeah.
And I think it's extremely important for any minister to be connected to their community, their broader community, to be a part of conversations that are not church-centric or religious-centric. And so, maybe for a pastor in the Valley that really wants to connect with people, this might be a good space for them to even just be in an environment that's not their environment, and be stretched, be challenged with the things that people are saying and asking, and learn how to be okay with that.
Yeah, I love that.
Anyway.
Okay, so under Stories of TOV, you have Barstool Theology, and you have... What?
Whiskey and the Writings.
I love it.
Whiskey and
I love the names, first of all. I just really love the names.
I know. We're not very traditional. So...
it's okay.
So Whiskey and the Writings is a YouTube channel. And it's a channel, kind of talking head, me. And it's combining two things that I love to do, which is drink some bourbon and talk about the Bible. And, I have my master's in biblical theology. I've spent my adult life studying theology, apologetics, and I just love helping people fall in love with the Bible. And so I'm more of a teacher than I am a preacher. So I'm just combining these things where I just want to sit down with people and and just talk about the Bible.
Yeah.
Talk about concepts in the Bible. Talk about faith. And
in an approachable way.
I mean, hopefully.
Well, I think it is.
Hopefully.
I mean, I've watched some, and I mean, it's approachable. It's anybody can tune in and listen to it. And I also just want to say, you really are like one of the smartest biblically smart people I have ever. You have a way. Well, you both have a way of bringing anybody in and making them feel like the most important person in the room. Like you both have like this incredible gift in that. And Joe, some of the things that you've said, because you guys were our small group leaders for a while, I have never been so curious and been so passionate about certain stories in the Bible and wanting to know more and make me fall back in love with the Bible, like as you have. So I do need to say that.
That's very kind.
I did not mean to interrupt.
Very kind.
Yeah, the channel's meant to be a space where we're going to ask questions that you're just not going to talk about in church typically. Yeah. And again, it's geared towards, I mean, I think anybody could probably learn something from it, but if you're pretty solid and stuck in the way that you think about the Bible, you probably won't like Whiskey and the Writings, because I'm just going to challenge all of it. Not from a place that says, I think that God can't be trusted. I think the Bible's the most amazing piece of literature that has ever been gifted to the earth, and it is because of God's inspiration in it that this has the sustaining power that it has had over the millennia. And so for me, I want people to see the beauty and depth and richness of the Bible, and that will only come if you have a curious heart and mind. If you're reading the Bible believing what you already believe, you're only going to find the things you want to find. Yeah. So my goal is to ask the kinds of questions that make you go, oh, I never thought of that before. Well, oh, no one's ever said that before. And I'm not telling you whether or not you should believe it or not believe it.
Right.
I'm just saying wrestle with it.
Yeah.
Talk to God about that. And so for me, Whiskey and the Writings is about enjoying a drink and just talking about the Bible. So that launched in January, and you can find it on YouTube, Whiskey and the Writings. Just do the search and you'll see it there.
It's kind of like podcast style, right? You're talking and in a set, and you just start.
Yeah. Eventually we'll do interviews like this, you know, but it's just a new channel where I'm just exploring my thoughts and ideas and concepts, and it's like a playground for me to go, I'm just going to get what's in my brain out into the world and see if people like it. Yeah. That's all.
I love it.
So Stories of TOV is our head brand. Underneath it, we have these ministries that fit under that umbrella. Barstool Theology, Whiskey and the Writings, storiesoftov.com also has writings that I do. So it's like
blog style?
Blog style posts that I'll put content out there, trying to get Jane to write some stuff. And so
Jane, will we see you on Whiskey and the Writings?
Maybe someday. I'm a seasoned pro now.
Yeah, there you go.
I love it. And this is your full-time ministry. You both also have jobs, though. You both are also in the workforce. This is just something that not a Christianese retort, but a truly what God has called you guys to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, truly, it's what God has called you to do.
We have a 5-year plan, business plan, to grow to the point where this can be our full-time jobs. Jane has, her whole background is in accounting, and it's like God strategically put us together, and it's just so much fun because for such a time as this, everything has been building to this moment where I resigned from my position as an associate pastor back in December of 2024, and to step into what we believe God is leading us into.
We were those people saying, God's calling us somewhere else.
No.
But
I guess I just realized it.
Oh, I realized it early on.
So did I.
All right, I'll take it all back.
And I think it's an and. It's not even a but. It's and he's been building this in you and has put this in you. Because, we could talk about so many things and we won't, but there are so many instances. that I know, and there's probably more because I don't know you guys as well as you know you guys, but there are so many instances in your life that have put you guys in situations to be around people who have been hurt. And it breaks your heart. God created that in you to literally have your guys' hearts break for what breaks his. And so he's put you in these positions and taken you through your life to cause you to like, gosh, what can we do? It's why I started Stories Unveiled. It's, God, what do I do with this?
How do we respond to the need?
Yeah, I hate this piece that we show up to church every week. We pretend like everything's fine. Our life isn't falling apart. I didn't just scream at my kids on the way in.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep on the couch because my husband and I are fighting and our marriage might not survive. Like, but we show up and we pretend like everything's okay.
Yeah.
And so providing a space to say like, it's not okay, but God is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that really resonated with me was this statement that I don't know where it comes from. I'm not going to give myself the credit to say I wrote this.
But somebody did.
Because probably someone else did, and I just am recalling it. But the statement says, God never wastes our wounds.
Yeah.
God never wastes our wounds.
Right.
And we all have wounds. We carry our wounds. You have wounds. But God's always wanting to use that to move his story, his good story forward. And that's the biblical narrative, right? I mean, you look at the scope of the Bible and it's just a bunch of stories about people who aren't the greatest of people at times, and sometimes they do good, and it's, good guy, bad guy, right? It depends on the story you're reading. But God is always involved in that story, and he's moving it forward to his good and his kingdom. And so helping people see that, like, you're carrying a wound. I get it. I get it. So let's discover then what is God's story in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Where is he leading you through that? And so these are the things that we want to walk alongside people in, and it ain't going to be easy.
No.
People are going to challenge, and we're not going to know how to respond, and we're just going to, that's really tough. And but we're here.
Yeah.
We're here, and we're just going to sit in it with you, and believe that the God of the universe is in it with us. So.
I love that. Well, I'm going to ask both of you, because I end every episode, in light of your story, what would you tell listeners? And so I'll ask the same question to both of you guys. Okay. What would you tell a listener who has been wounded, is deconstructing, is basically in this situation of, I don't know what I believe, I don't know about this God thing, I definitely don't know about church, questioning, what did you say, the spiritually curious? Yeah. More than just come to Stories of TOV, but what encouragement would you have for somebody walking through that season right now?
Do you want me to go? Or you?
Go for it.
I think I would remind. Well, here's. I had this conversation. Sorry, it's kind of a
you're good.
A larger answer, but someone was challenging one of my, in comment, YouTube, right? It's super fun. Yeah, super fun.
I love that you love that.
I love the negative comments. They're my favorite. I got so excited when I got my first negative comment. I was like, Jan, I got a negative comment.
Oh, Joe.
But this guy and I were going back and forth, and I just said, I'm sorry, but I feel like someone has hurt you. And because there was just this negativity, it's like, who hurt you?
Yeah, like an axe to grind or like a point to prove.
Yeah, like you're fighting this battle, but I don't think you're fighting. You think you're fighting this like theological concept of how dumb it is to believe in the Bible. I actually think someone hurt you really bad. Yeah, and you're taking it out on God. And so I want to remind a person that is in a space of hurt and pain. They're angry. They're deconstructing. They're like, they're wrestling with the reality. I was raised to believe this thing, and now it's false, or that leader let you down, or all these things. The statement that we never judge Jesus by the abuse done in his name. Yeah. So I want to invite you to explore Jesus, and how do we do that? We spend time in the Gospels. That's where we know who he is and what he was about. That's our only look, all of the stuff after the Gospels is about how we live it out, right? These 4 biographies of Jesus is the only thing that we have to point us to who Jesus actually is.
And those are Matthew, Mark,
Luke, and John.
For those that
these 4 biographies about Jesus. And so pick one of those and read it.
Yeah.
And then when you're done, read it again. And then when you're done, read it again. And then when you're done, read it again. Infuse your heart and your mind and your soul into the things that Jesus said and did. Then let that be the outworking of how you express your relationship with him. And so I want to encourage you, if someone's listening that's in that space, to try Jesus. And if you want a safe place to explore those thoughts and ideas, come visit us at Barstool Theology.
I love it.
Well, I would say it's probably not an accident that you're listening to this.
That's good.
And also encourage you that God, his love is transformational. There is nothing like it, and I have seen lives changed. I have been one of those lives that have been changed. Also, I'm really sorry for the hurt that you have and the pain and the wounds that you carry. And we see you, and we feel for you, and we love you, and God loves you and wants to see you become whole in who he created you to be. So
that's beautiful. Oh, you guys. I love you guys.
Oh, we love you. Your family.
We love your family.
You got a pretty rad family.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time today and sitting down with me and chatting, opening up your hearts a little bit.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's conversation on the Stories Unveiled podcast. We would love it if you would leave us a rating or review. If you would like to learn more about Stories Unveiled and our events, go to storiesunveiledconference.com or follow us on Facebook or Instagram at storiesunveiled_. The Stories Unveiled podcast is created in partnership with KTSY and Barefoot Media Ministries. For more encouragement and other podcasts, visit ktsy.org. Have an incredible day and go live unveiled.